overhead flexion. So we have a PVC pipe and a 10-pound change plate here. You can use a lot of different things. I've had people use like a PVC pipe at home, or like a trekking pole, or even like the poles that go like on the roof rack of your car, something along those lines. Just something somewhat stable that you can put a little bit of weight on. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna use the PVC pipe and the weight to kind of help load us into a flexion. So we use this a lot for people that are coming off of post-op surgical, someone that has an irritated shoulder joint. It's just a great way to be able to train into an overhead position without putting a ton of strain on this, smaller muscles on kind of like the back of our body and into that rotator cuff. We can take advantage of like our lat and our pec and stuff like that to get into an overhead position. So with that being said, when we get into an overhead position, a lot of times we're cueing thoracic extension, slight lumbar extension, those force couples to get us into a good stable overhead position. Because typically when I prescribe this, I'm giving it to somebody that has a range of motion restriction. So what I want is we're gonna actually reverse the curvature and put your lumbar spine in a little bit of flexion, keep it there so we can focus on elongating the tissues that are tight. Then the second piece is gonna be wherever the weight's at. So if you put the weight in the middle of the PVC, it's obviously gonna be loaded symmetrically between your arms. If you get the weight all on one side, you can really bias to one side over the other. And then the demonstration I'm doing is on the ground. So at home or in the gym, if you're able to elevate your surface using like a bench or a couple plow boxes stacked on top of each other or whatever it may be, you'll be able to get in a little bit more of a deep position where your arms are gonna go beyond the edge of the surface, and that's gonna improve the range of motion and increase the loading in those tissues. So I'll give you a couple examples here. So when I get set up, most people need to have their hands a little bit wider than shoulder width, and then we're gonna do a posterior pelvic tilt by pushing our low back into the ground, thinking about tucking our tailbone under us. We're gonna breathe in through our nose. That creates expansion through our rib cage, and we're gonna come to this overhead position, and then back up. So for most people, you're not gonna be able to get to that full range of motion to start. So maybe if you go here and come back out, that's your starting point. It's just gonna be different for whatever type of procedure or injury you're working through. And then if I wanna bias it, all I gotta do is just kind of shimmy the weight over, or just slide it over, or put it back down and reset it. And then come back into this overhead position with my low back into the ground with that posterior pelvic tilt. The key with this is just slow and in controlled loading. And typically I'll have people pause where it feels tight, hold that for 3 seconds, come back out of it. Just do your best to control the motion. Now, if you notice if you get into an overhead position and the front of your shoulders start getting pinchy, you can kind of see how wide my hands are here. You can adjust the width of your hands. And sometimes if the shoulder is really irritated, we'll have people hold on to the edge of the dowel or whatever they're using. And that's going to facilitate a little bit of external rotation, which will help clear some of those structures in the shoulder, which may help alleviate some of those irritable symptoms. The goal is range of motion. Do your best to stay out of any sort of pain. We're not trying to force the motion here. We're trying to get back to where our limitations are, hold that position, return back to the starting position.